Welcome. The purpose of this particular video is to discuss with you some of the tools that you can use as you are navigating your way through the Toronto Public Library website. We're obviously in a difficult situation where we physically can't go to libraries or to school for at least the next few weeks and potentially for a while after that. But it is important that you're able to do some research. And luckily, we're blessed in that we live in a city where obviously Toronto is quite large. They have a wonderful library system with huge amounts of access to information. And an online forum, quite a lot of that is available every day, including these days, at your fingertips. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a little bit of how you can do some of that research and what kinds of things you can be looking for. You'll notice that I have a Toronto Library card here, and on the back I have a little bit of information that I'll use. If you have trouble where you're not able to, I guess, have your own card, or your parents don't have a card, or you don't live in the city of Toronto, send me a quick email and I'll try to help you out as much as I can. Some databases may not work because you may need an individual sort of password, but certainly for some of the major things like JSTOR, you should be able to get on just using hopefully a card, or if I provide you with a number, you should be able temporarily to do that as well. So, what are some of the tools that you can use? Well, typically when you go to a library, the most useful, I guess, tab on the website in person would be this particular tab here. It tells you the books that the library has, it tells you the movies, the DVDs, the music, and it basically gives you a record of all of the physical media that exists within not just one library branch, but all 99 branches across the city of Toronto. And you can use it either to sort of locate where you might find information. So for a non-fictional book, you can find its Dewey Decimal listing, go to a larger library and look for all the books that are in that particular area on that topic, because of course it's organized by theme. Or you have the opportunity as well to actually have books delivered throughout the system. And so if you see a book that's on the far end of Etobicoke and you live in Scarborough, well, then you can ask your local branch, can you through the web, you can have it delivered to that branch, and then within usually about no more than 2 weeks you can go and pick things up. What people don't always know with the library, though, is that there's a huge amount, as I mentioned, of online material. And really, for a person who's doing academic research, which is what you would be doing for a senior social science course, there's an enormous amount that you have access to at your fingertips. And so what I'm going to go through is, I'm not going to look at everything here because it would take way too long, but I'm going to look at a couple of things that might be of particular interest that you may want to sort of take a look at. And so the first one that I'm going to do is under this tab here, which is probably the most useful of all tabs. It's the Articles and Online Research tab, which is designed for particular academic research. So I'll click on it, and then I'll talk to you a little bit when we get there. Okay, here you can see there are some databases that you can use that give you different kinds of benefits. If you know specifically what kind of newspaper or journal you're looking for, you can see it. I'll move my head over a little bit here. On this side, there's online searches, there's listings, so on and so forth. But generally speaking, for a person at your level, you're probably not going to be that specific. But what you are going to likely want to use is some of the material which you can see on the side on the left here. A couple of things that are particularly useful are the three that they've recommended. You can try out Academic OneFile and Sage Journals on your own. In fact, I'll go through Academic OneFile a little bit with you. Probably the best, though, it's a little bit higher end in terms of I guess the level of research, but would be JSTOR. If you go to university in social studies and you're looking up information on topics, JSTOR is a really, really useful site. What is JSTOR? It's essentially a sort of aggregation of a number of different print, usually, or at least traditionally print-based journals published for academics. When a person works in a university, obviously a portion of what they do is teaching, but really most people don't try to get a PhD so they can teach undergraduate students. It's not really the goal for most people in that position. What they are trying to do with a huge amount of their time, more of their time really, is doing research that contributes to general knowledge within their particular field. And the more you can be published and sort of recognized by your peers as your research shows up in these journals, the more personal sort of credit that you'll get in terms of obviously building up your name, but also more the reputation of your school. And people often at university level really seek out effective researchers who can not only be intelligent people, but also publish a sort of range of different material that, again, sort of brings respect to the institution. So we'll go to JSTOR. We'll look a little bit at how that works. And you'll see here, you'll go to this page and then you'll access online. Now, I've already signed in, but this is the point where you would need your library card. And so you would just sort of use that. And typically they'll ask you, and you can see this here, they'll ask you for the barcode. I'm not worried about showing mine off. I don't think anybody's going to do anything inappropriate. And so you can see that there. So you access online, continue. And there we go. Now, I did a little bit of pre-work before I did this video just to try to make it a little bit more efficient. A couple of things I should say when you're searching, because you can just use the search bar here, or there'll be another one after you do your first search. Do not just search the title of your topic and assume that's the only way you can get information. JSTOR, like any database, it searches based on algorithms, which are computer codes that are used to try to figure out what kind of information you might have. It's not always going to read your mind as well as you want it to just based on a particular search string. And so the biggest tip I can give you is try a number of different searches and see how they go. If you do a search and your information is okay, but maybe not quite as specific as you wanted, then maybe make it a little bit more specific. So if I search the death penalty and I get all kinds of information about the death penalty in China, which isn't very useful, and I want to know about the death penalty in the southern United States, well, then maybe I pick the state I'm looking for and I say, okay, tell me about the death penalty in Texas. And then that more specific search inquiry may yield better results. When you're doing your research, one of the things that I asked you to do on your proposals in a number of classes was to actually sort of think about what were sub-questions you need to address when you're doing different aspects of your research. Don't be afraid to use those kinds of search strings as well, because it may be that you're not looking for a general sort of article on the death penalty at all, but if that's your topic, you may want to know about wrongful convictions in Canada because you intend to make an argument about how wrongful convictions are maybe a reason why hypothetically you don't support the death penalty. And so having that information is not going to come from a death penalty search necessarily, but it will come from a specific search for wrongful convictions, and more so wrongful convictions within Canada. A couple of just examples that I've tested out that will work. One of them is actually a really interesting topic. I was pleased to see it. One of the girls in an anthropology class that we have this year has decided to research the benefits of reading to children. A very, very important topic, particularly for young educational psychologists. And so if I type that in, benefits of reading to children, and then search, you'll see that there's a lot of information that comes up. We've got an article here. Now it's a little bit older. You do have to be careful of JSTOR. Sometimes things can be a little old. So if it's a 70s, 60s article, don't use something from 50 years ago, but that's 25, 30 years. That's probably appropriate enough. There you can see one that's from 2007, so on and so forth. And you can see who wrote the articles. You can see where they came from. Now, you're not necessarily always going to get great stuff. Please do not commit yourself to the first thing that came up. You'll notice here we've got 97,000 entries. They've tried to sort of sort things so that we have, the best of that 100,000 things that came up, but you may actually have to try to filter. You may have to look at sort of subject matter, so on and so forth. And really, one of the biggest suggestions I can make with this kind of research is do not take the first thing that's there. Be just as eager to discard information that ultimately doesn't really lead you anywhere as you are to sort of find new things. You want to find good things, and you don't necessarily want to find the first 10 articles that pop up, because that will not yield good research in the end. So here I'll click on one of these just so we can kind of take a quick look at what comes up. So there's an article. You can see it's about 13, or actually, sorry, math is poor, 10 pages. So we'll click. Now, a couple of points that I want to make when you're getting this information. You can do a lot of useful things with what you, pull up from JSTOR. One of them is that you can download the information. You can read it all online. You can do whatever you want with it as you're getting that information. Another thing that's quite useful, and people often ignore this, is that you can actually get your citations often directly from JSTOR or some of the other kinds of databases we're going to use. JSTOR is designed to be used for research, so they're trying to help you out, because they know almost everybody who uses that article will probably in some kind of paper cite it, whether it's a high school student or more likely university sort of researcher, student, whatever. Click on Cite the Item. It's different locations on different databases, but for JSTOR right now, it's here. And you'll notice that I get an MLA citation right there that actually gives me exactly what I require for my bibliography. And so I can copy that in if I'm using MLA, if I've chosen to use APA or Chicago. It depends on which reference tool you've used. Just be consistent. You can get that, and you can rest assured that the people who put together the references at JSTOR, they're not going to give you false information. Double check it, but it's going to be pretty much what you require. So keep that in mind. You're going to need references both for, at least in my classes, your outlines of your papers, as well as your your final reports, where you'll have to have references and footnotes. And having that information from the get-go, it will just make your job a lot easier. Now, a couple of other things that I'll mention about JSTOR. Obviously, there's lots of different sorts of searches that you can do. To give you another example, I'll just do Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a topic that some economics students look at every year. And again, you can see different sorts of things. You may have to, if you're getting too much information, that's still 403 articles, you may have to kind of filter it down. But I would recommend, first thing you should probably use when you're doing some research, if you need a few more articles, would be JSTOR. It's a really good thing, especially for topics that are obviously popular and important ones. Okay, so we're going to go back to the Toronto website, and we'll talk about some other stuff in a second here. All right, so that's JSTOR. If you go back into that articles and online research database, I can show you again some of the other links. There's a few things that are kind of useful here. The second one, which I'll show you very quickly because it's kind of a duplication of JSTOR, is Academic OneFile. Academic OneFile will give you, here you can see, same sorts of access, but just different kinds of databases. So I'll click on it and then we'll go in. Okay, now it's called Gale right now. I'm also going to show you a few things. Gale has actually a number of different databases which you can actually sort of filter back and forth between. But again, when you're searching through this particular resource, you can get a lot of information just sort of quickly through your searches. So as an example, if I was going to be searching eating disorders, then there will probably be a lot that comes up. And you'll notice they actually even give you a suggestion sometimes of search strings that might work. So maybe I'll actually use one of those. I want to see eating disorders for adolescents. Okay, let's actually narrow the search a little bit and see what comes up there. And again, you'll see there's all kinds of different information. You can see where it's coming from. You can click on it. You can get the links. When you click on it, there'll be a spot where you can get your citation, so on and so forth. Okay, and again, I'll just do one just to quickly show you. There you go. You can find your information there, and then somewhere within the link, in fact, it's just there at the bottom, source citation, you can collect that. Now, this isn't a scan, it's more of just a text copy, but you can see what was there. The one thing I wanted to show you for Gale is that you can also change your database. And so if you're trying to find information that's maybe not an academic resource, but it's maybe like you want to search Canadian newspapers, they also have an access to that that you can get through here. You can get it through the Toronto website, but it's actually kind of confusing. So I'm just going to give you a tip right now. Click Change Databases, and then go down to the one that says CPI.Q. That's Canadian Periodicals Index. For a lot of the topics that I teach, particularly ones that deal with current affairs, so law and economics, you may actually want to limit to Canadian newspapers. So if you click there, you can actually do the same sort of searches, but a little bit more specific. To give you an example, there's a student or two in one of my law classes who are searching the topic or working on the topic of racial profiling. And if I limit my searches to Canadian periodicals, you'll notice that you'll get material, and here we go, that actually is very specific to magazines and newspapers published in Canada. So racial profiling in Canada, an issue. Montreal police street checks disproportionately target people of color. You're getting really specific things, and limiting your search to that particular database that's just Canadian newspapers is useful. So again, you might want to play around. There's a whole lot of other kinds of databases that were in that particular area. Just to sort of, again, sort of give you a sense of how that worked, you go to change database when you're on Gale, and that will allow for you to find those things. Okay, we're going to go back to the Toronto Public Library site, and I'm going to show you just a couple more pieces of information. Okay, so that's academic research, and you can do a lot of that. A couple of other things that I'll suggest, and I may not go through, you may have to just sort of play around. You may, again, have to sort of log in a few times to try it out. On this side, there's a number of different sorts of access to databases for digital magazines and newspapers. Some of that stuff can be kind of interesting and useful. You can also do things like ebooks and even some digital video and music. We'll do a little bit with ebooks and digital video just to give you an idea of how that works. So I clicked on ebooks here. Ebooks, they use a program called Overdrive. You will have to set up an account. So you're going to have your own personal card to do so. But if you have a particular account, you can set up, it's free. You just have to use your library card number and your email. You can actually get into Overdrive, which you can use to actually access books. Now, you have to check them out, and you get them for a couple of weeks. But access books that will go to your computer, or if you want to set up software on your sort of smart device or your tablet or your phone, or if you have a Kindle, I guess you can do that as well. You can search there. And again, some topics you may actually get some interesting stuff with. So I'll click on here and I'll just show you. Okay, now I'm not signed in. I won't deal with all that, but I'll just show you the search that you can do. Again, some topics there'll be nothing. Like you're not going to get anything on self-defense Canadian law, most likely because it's very specific and academic. But if it's a little bit more of a popular type thing, there may be actually some kind of interesting information. So one topic that some people are doing, which is kind of more of a popular topic, at least in terms of its audience, is eating disorders. So I'll search that. And here you see all kinds of different information and books that you can use that are on that topic. Okay, and again, there's a number of different things, but there's obviously some information that might be useful. And you probably want to take a look at like the sort of description of the books, see if they're going to help. Worst case scenario, you take a book out, you flip through it, you don't use it, and you just kind of digitally return it to the library, which you can do through that software. But it's at least another tool that's available. It's something that might be of use to you, especially like the death penalty is another example. There are certain topics, Bitcoin, that you're going to get some books for. The last thing that I want to show you is some of the access to actual videos and things. And so I'm going to go there now, if you give me 1 second. Okay. Toronto Library has some digital video sources. And they're actually a little different than a Netflix in the sense that, while some of them, like Hoopla, are more just kind of like a B-grade version of that, they also have access to video sources that actually focus more on things like documentaries, where if you're tired of having to be at a computer and stare at stuff on a screen, I'm certainly getting sick of it just a couple of weeks into this experience. You may want to actually have some visual material where you can kind of lean back, put your sort of computer up on a support and watch from the comfort of sort of a couch or a chair. And so here I'll show you how that works. If you go to digital video and music. Okay, you'll notice that there's a number of different things. Hoopla, feel free to sign up if you have a card, and again, you're going to need a card to do this. If you want to watch, movies from about a year ago and thousands of different kinds of free movies, it might be useful. Not everybody has Netflix, and you're going to be dealing with some sort of cabin fever this week, so it might be kind of interesting for you. Another one, though, that I would recommend, it's a little bit better for documentary type material, is Canopy. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to show you how that works. Okay. Canopy essentially is a video source which you can access a lot of information from. Now, if you have your account signed in, it just plays the videos. I won't go through all that because there's probably copyright issues, but you can at least see there's all kinds of different videos, but there's a lot of documentaries. Right off the bat, you can see some interesting sorts of things. This here would be about human trafficking, which is a really interesting sort of and sad story in terms of Canadian law, as well as to a certain extent anthropology and psychology would connect there. You've got Code Girl, which talks, I'm assuming, about To be honest, I don't know. I'd have to read about that. But you got some interesting sorts of things. Like any kind of database, you can search it. A couple searches that I did earlier that worked out. One of them, racial profiling. I keep coming back to the same topics. I apologize. I just was trying to do things that I knew would work. Here, you can search it. And you'll notice you've got some interesting kinds of databases. Now, some of these may be a little bit more American, so you'd have to factor that in. But you've got all kinds of information about different sort of, I guess, circumstances where racial profiling has played a role. Stop and frisk was a very controversial policy when Michael Bloomberg was mayor of New York. You might have heard about that. They'll have an interesting, I assume, documentary on that. You have to watch. I don't know if it's good or not. You've got something here on murdered in Black and Latino youth. That's a lot of stuff there. And again, it's not traditional books, but you might watch it and think, wow, this is great, perfect information for what I was doing. Another topic, which is kind of a modern tech topic that definitely worked, is Bitcoin. And so you can see that there. And again, banking on Bitcoin. Sorry, I'll move my thing here. How it's a negative, perhaps. The challenges, the deep web. One more topic we'll do. Okay, that one didn't work so well. So sometimes you're not going to get. I was going to get hopefully something on Toronto housing. That's maybe a little too specific for a database that has a lot of more American type sources. But the key point is try it out. You might get something or two that's really useful. Depending on your topic, you're probably going to find some things that are certainly helpful for whatever you're doing. I'll do one more on eating disorders because I know that will come up. Yeah, okay, and there you can go. There's a whole lot of information, eating disorders and sort of how you deal with them, so on and so forth. That would be a natural topic for a documentary, so there's a lot that's there. So that kind of gives you an idea of video access that you have. And again, quite useful, quite a lot that might be of extreme value to you just in that particular source. I think I'm going to end the video here just because I've kind of gone through most of what I want to discuss. If you go to the Toronto site, you'll notice there's also some online access to magazines that works along the same lines as your books. If you know a magazine like The Economist and you want to flip through and find information from different years, you can. The key idea is that you have tons and tons and tons that's there. And I think for almost every topic, rather than just doing a really blind Google search and not necessarily coming up with the most reliable information, try to please use some of these sources. Definitely as I move forward and I start to mark and evaluate some of the products of your research, I am going to be looking for the quality of the kinds of materials you've found. And all of the sorts of things that we've been seeing here, or at least in most cases, would represent good quality. If you have any questions, please do let me know, particularly if you have any questions about just how to get access. If you don't have a card, I'll try to find a way of sort of helping you out there. But other than that, yeah, hopefully this was useful, and hopefully it helps you as you do research over at least the next couple of weeks while you're at home. Thank you.